Okay, welcome to my part 4 presentation. I'm continuing the same topic, data presentation and data collection. Now in the previous part 3, I talked about frequency distribution table. Now I'm going to majorly talk about contingency table. Then that will mark the end of our tabular presentation. Then we'll go to number 2, which is graphical presentation. So as I mark the tabular presentation, the contingency table, this was the second one because the first one was frequency distribution table. So let's define what a contingency table is. So by definition, okay, contingency table is a tabular representation that displays the frequency distribution of variables, helping to observe patterns, relationship between two or more categorical variables. It's a tabular representation that displays the frequency distribution of variables, helping to observe patterns, relationship between two or more categorical variables. Remember, we had already talked about categorical variable, which we stated example that was ordinal and nominal data. So when I talk about categorical variables, you understand what categorical variable is. Our uses of contingency table. Use number 1, it is used in surveying and experiments. Use number 2, it helps in analyzing the relationship between the variables. It's like it shows the correlation between variable A and variable B. Then number 3, lastly, it is used in chi-square test for independence. I think in test of hypothesis and also in dispersion, measures of dispersion, I will teach you about chi-square tests. And also I think we'll be taught it in the but in the test of hypothesis or hypothesis testing. So there's also a unit on its own called chi-square or chi-square testing. So I want us to do one example of a contingency table. That's why I've done my table, but I've left it blank. I want us to fill it so that we understand how to prepare a contingency table. So here let me name it, this is a contingency table. Contingency table for TTNP examination report. You see, that's my heading. They must always have a heading. Now this is the example, and I'll read the example. Example 1, then from the example, we are going to come up with what? A contingency table. So this example, performance of TTNP exams report. Out of 3,000 male candidates below 20 years of age, 500 candidates passed and 300 failed. Of the 1,100 male candidates above 20 years of age, 200 passed and 900 failed. Likewise, out of 500 female candidates below 20 years of age, 100 passed and 400 failed. And out of 340 female candidates above 20 years of age, 80 passed and 260 failed. Using this information, construct a contingency table. Now we want to use this information to construct a contingency table. So I want you to follow me step by step as we prepare a contingency table using this example. So this is my table. I've just drawn it, but I've left it blank so that we may fill it together. Now follow keenly and step by step. So the question says, let's start by the part of the male. We have the below 20 years and above 20 years. We have male and female, male, female total, those who pass and those who fail, and the overall total. So let's start. The performance runs out of 3,500 male candidates. So what were the total of the male candidates? There were 3,500. So here will be what? 3,500. Below 20 years of age, you are working on the below 20 years of age. 500 passed and 3,000 failed. So here 500 passed and 3,000 failed. Continue. Of the 1,100 male candidates above 20 years of age, now we are now still male candidates, but now on the above, not below, above. Of the above, 200 passed and 900 failed. So total were 1,100, 200 passed and 900 failed. Hope you're following. Then Yes, we are here. And you get here. Now, likewise, out of the 500 female candidates below 20 years of age, now we have female candidates but below 20 years of age, out of the 500, 100 passed and 400 failed. So the total were 500. 100 passed and 400 failed. And of the candidates below, and of the 340 female candidates above 20 years of age, 80 passed and 260 failed. 80 passed and 260 failed. Total of 340. Now we get the total. This will be now 500 plus 100 plus 200. That will be 800. So this will be 880. Then this will be 3,900. 4,300. So this will be 4,560. Then here will be 4,600. 5,100. 5,100 plus 340. That's 5,440. 5,440. That is our contingency table. So we have prepared a contingency table. Now, in an exam situation, you might be given a question like this one, or not exactly this, but you'll be asked to, from that question, you form what? A contingency table. So know how you realign your variables so that they fit to the table. Now that marks the part of the tabular presentation of the data. Now I'll enter the second part, that is graphical presentation of the data. So I'm done with the table now, I will be at the graphical part. Now under the graphical I'll only cover three parts of them which are more important and the one which are usually set in the exam as per this level. That we will discuss about bar graph, pie chart and histogram. Bar graph, pie charts and histogram. Now what is a graphical representation? Now a graphical representation, it is the use of visual elements such as charts, graphs and diagrams to present data or information. It is the use of visual elements such as charts, graphs, and diagrams to present data or information. For example, what are these examples of graphical elements? A graphical presentation will be having a bar graph. Under bar graph, we have three categories. We have a simple bar graph, component bar graph, and a multiple bar graph. So in my next session, number part 5 for my presentation, we are going to draw both the simple bar graph, component bar graph, and multiple bar graph. Then number 2, we are going to talk about pie chart. I'll give you a formula of how to calculate a pie chart, and we'll turn, draw a pie chart. Then lastly, we'll draw an histogram, which will mark the end of this topic, data collection and data presentation. Now, before I come to that part, that will be my part 5 to do these three, let me highlight the advantages of graphical presentation. Now the advantages of graphical presentation. Advantage number 1, it is that it simplifies complex data. So when we represent data in a graphical form, then the complex and numerical value will be simplified. Then number 2, it reveals patterns and trends. The trend is the movement. How is the trend of the data? Number 3, it facilitates comparison. When we present data in graphical form, to compare will be much easy. It saves time and labor. It gives effective impression because when it is all about visual. When you draw a graph, you see it, you look at it, so that impression, effective impression. Then lastly, it is easy to understand and interpret. When we present data in graphical form, interpreting it and understanding it becomes even much easier. Disadvantages, it can be misleading. A simple mistake in drawing a graph or pie chart or histogram may mislead. Lack of details. Most of the graphs does not have enough details for good analysis. When you want intense analysis, we can choose graphical presentation. Number 2, it requires interpretation. When you're given a data in a graphical form, unless you know how to interpret it, you may not understand the meaning of that data. What is represented in that data. Number 4, it is not it is not always suitable for youth. For example, in a scenario where we are having a very big or complex number, it is always not suitable to use graph as a method of presentation. Next is time consuming when the data is too big. Then lastly, it is limited for complex analysis. When you have a complex analysis, for example, you want to analyze the correlation and regression, use of graph may be limited at some point or somehow. That marks the end of my part 4 presentation. Thank you and welcome to part 5 of my presentation, of which I'm going to tackle bar graph, pie chart and histogram, and that will mark the end of this topic, data collection and data presentation. Thank you.